Okay, we are going full fedora today, okay? Because now it's relevant to my life, and I'm a little bit rustled. All
Hey,
right,
Destiny.
capitalist heistman. Hold on, let me get a soda because I'm gonna need one for this, okay?
Okay, dude, take your time.
Okay. Okay, mate. Let's start with First of all, how are you doing today?
Good, man. How are you?
Pretty good. I love you. You know that, right? And you love me as well, right? We all love each other.
I do. I
Okay.
love you a lot.
Okay. So what is our disagreement about?
Okay.
Okay.
Um, as I said in my first tweet to you,
Mm-hmm.
I think that the way you view religion and how you act like whenever it's brought up is just as toxic as what you say your mother's view of religion is whenever you bitch about it on stream, which is pretty funny, by the way.
Okay.
Um, I'm
Can you
not
elaborate on that point? Because I disagree.
okay. Um, First, I just want to lay a little ground. I believe in God, but I won't argue my belief in God because I realize that my belief in God personally is based entirely off of not factual information. I actually haven't looked at anything up. A lot of my belief in God is based off of anecdotal evidence that just causes me to think that maybe there is a God out there.
Okay. What
Um,
is your denomination? Just curious.
I'm non-denominational.
Non-denominational? Do you attend
Yeah,
any ceremonies like mass or church or anything like that?
I used to, but I haven't in a while.
Okay.
Because I have a really hard time focusing for that long.
Gotcha.
Um, but I do believe in God. I think that the way you view it and the way you attack it, I guess, kind of gives this idea that, and I hate to say this, but it kind of sounds like you're one of the people on Atheism Plus tipping their fedora to it every time they talk about how people who believe in God are like literal lesser human beings. And when you take that approach, not only do you shut off a lot of people from what you believe in, but a lot of people like your mother who believe that what they say is just a way to get back at all the dirty atheists and Muslims and blah 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 blah.
Okay, can I expand on that a little bit to
Okay, sure.
clarify? Okay, so firstly, I don't know if I would say that I look at people who are religious as lesser humans, but to not mince words, right? We both agree that there are viewpoints that people can hold that as a result of them holding said viewpoints, you view them in, I don't want to say like a subhuman or lesser human way, but you have a negative view of said viewpoints, right?
100% agree.
Sure. So religion to me is one of those things. Okay, if somebody is religious to me, it's just like a knock. It's just a negative quality, right? The same way if they I don't know, smell bad or had weird eyes or I don't know. Just it's just a negative trait, right? It's there's no
Okay.
redeeming quality there. So that's how I view that.
Okay.
In terms of whether or not you'd be able to engage somebody like that in conversation, I understand that a lot of the times the statements that I make on stream are pretty inflammatory. I do believe or I subscribe to the ideology that you catch more flies with honey than vinegar or whatever, right? So I understand that if I was trying to convert people to atheism, that it would be very suboptimal to insult people of their religious belief and then expect them to entertain anything that I say seriously, right? I agree with that, right? So I
Okay.
understand that for sure. Typically, usually, if I'm talking about it, it's very, 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 very rare that I engage in an actual conversation about this topic because of all the shit on both sides, right? This is like I've probably done this topic maybe 2 or 3 times in my whole streaming career, like seriously, if that, maybe only 1 or 2 times, right? Because usually it's a nightmare to address this topic. Typically, if I was having a serious conversation about it, I would be talking a little bit more like I do now, rather than the inflammatory, derogatory remarks that I'll just like make offhandedly on stream. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I understand your point that I do sound inflammatory. I do agree with it. I don't view people as subhumans for being religious, but I do view it as a negative trait. All right. So
Okay.
that's to summarize that. Okay.
All right. Then maybe I could make a slight attempt. Honestly, I don't get an opportunity to debate with people very often because a
Sure.
lot of the people I know use the argument my feelings
Mm-hmm.
whenever I bring it up because I used to be like a progressive, and then I stopped, but I still had a lot of those friends. So I never really get to have debate. So I want to, if it's okay with you, try and understand why you view people who think that in a lesser light, I guess, as a flaw, why you view that as a flaw.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'll take this to its logical extremes. Okay. But
Okay.
I'm not. It's everything should be rational. Okay.
Okay.
So if you follow the argument all the way back to its roots, okay, if you and me were to go back and forth for 30 minutes of arguing, eventually you would fall back on what you already admitted, that you believe in your religion because of your faith. Correct? Because
Yes.
your faith. Okay.
100%.
So the problem that I have with that is that the way that I live my life personally, I believe in self-interest, right? And I treat people the way that I would want to be treated, right? Jesus' golden rule, right? Not because of any divine authority, but just because that's what makes the most sense to secure personal freedom for myself. You argue freedoms for other people, right? So that everybody treats each other. Yeah, okay. So the problem is, I don't believe there exists a world where there's room for people with viewpoints that can't be rationally defended, because once you've made the concession that an irrational viewpoint can be allowed to stand and taken seriously, you've opened a can of worms for every irrational viewpoint to be treated fairly. So to give an example of this, and this is an example I've used in the past, let's say somebody was walking down the street and I'll say killed somebody, or even not even killed somebody, but they just had this super paranoid view of the world.
Religious people
where,
are hypocritical as all shit and
Oh,
just
the
warp their
Matrix
religion
thing?
to fit their
Hold on.
views. Fags are evil, but wearing clothes.
Okay, so let's say people were walking down the streets and they had this idea that, like everybody could be an Agent Smith, right? Well,
Yep.
you laughed at that, right? Because it's kind of a silly belief, right? But that
Yeah.
person has as much rational defense for their belief as you do for yours. So the problem you run into then is, how can you possibly engage that person in a constructive argument without believing that you're better than them, without having a bigoted point of view, right? Because you're essentially saying, okay, stop. You can't think that because that's crazy and you have no backing for it. However, I'm allowed to think this with no rational backing because faith. You understand, like that? I feel like you run into issues of consistency there.
I understand what you're saying to an extent, and
Okay.
I do agree that there is a large, maybe not a large number majority, but a very large vocal majority who definitely hold this idea that their beliefs are right because they are their beliefs, and other people's beliefs are wrong because they're not their beliefs. Personally, I don't subscribe to that. I'm not an evangelical Christian or evangelical Republican or whatever. I'm a conservative, but I very much am like separate state from religion. It's a very important thing to me. And even if I were to like read the 10 Commandments and go, this is all things that should be legislated on, it's not because they're the 10 Commandments. It's because of what the 10 Commandments would say. But I think that when you when you do say, I guess, when you say that people are less rational, I guess, for holding these beliefs, a lot of people are willing to admit that, yes, there may be a lack of rationality, but I don't think that holding that one belief should be an implication onto the rest of the beliefs that they hold, personally.
But unfortunately, I don't know if I agree with that. While you can defend every particular, okay, I agree with that. Sure, just because somebody believes one thing that might be batshit insane doesn't necessarily mean that every belief they have is incorrect. I agree with that. Okay.
And I do agree that if somebody's belief is batshit insane, like I would say that your mother takes it a little too far sometimes.
Well, my argument there is that every single religious person that believes in religion or a higher power is equally insane. Well, maybe not equally, but has an insane belief. But
okay, I guess that's a topic for later on. But in cases like your mother, I guess I could see where you would go into the rest of things, like thinking, hey, this person probably has a lot of very irrational beliefs, and I could see you doing that with me, even if I simply believe in God. But personally, I feel like what you end up doing is that you close off a lot of other thoughts that other people could have simply because of their belief in God. And I mean, if that's not the case, then like I don't know why we're on this call.
No, if somebody's capable of presenting an argument that doesn't involve God, I'm all for that, even if they happen to be religious. But that's the crux of the issue. That's like the singular most important point for why I detest religion so much, is because typically most people that are religious, their values or their system of generating morals and ethics is ultimately derived in religion. And any argument on ethics or morals will inevitably carry you back to that root, which is some kind of religious belief. It's one of the biggest reasons why I have a huge problem being pro-life, right? Because anytime anybody agrees with me being pro-life, their arguments all stem from religious points of view, and it becomes impossible to side with a person like that. Like Jesus, like I can't, like if you're making an argument, and again, this goes back to if you're making an argument about any kind of moral or ethical point of view, and your argument ultimately comes back to, well, that's my religious faith, what you're essentially saying is, I believe this thing for absolutely no rational reason, because I've already admitted that my particular faith is based on faith alone, and now these beliefs that I'm generating based on this faith are all equally irrational, right? If the seed is poisoned, then everything that stems from it is ultimately irrational. It's all bad,
Okay.
right?
Okay. I get what you're saying, but I think that the way you look at why people believe in God might be a little off. In cases like the evangelical right, and maybe even a lot of the Tea Party, it's a lot of, I believe in God because of my faith. But I feel like a lot more people believe in it because there's no reason, or unless I've missed something, there is no evidence that it doesn't exist. And like for thousands and thousands of years, we've held beliefs that haven't existed that may have come to be beliefs that have existed, whether it was through testing that we had to do thousands of years later down the line,
just
or whatever.
To go point by point. So for the first thing, there's no evidence that it doesn't believe. No rationally thinking person will seek to disprove that which is presented with no proof, right? That which can be asserted with no proof can be equally dismissed without proof, right? There's a thought experiment called Russell's teapot, right, where a philosopher named something, I think something Russell, maybe, I don't know what his first name was, but basically he asserted that if he were to claim that there was a teapot floating in an elliptical orbit around the sun between Mars and Earth, nobody would, and then were to continue to say like, oh, well, it can't be seen by a telescope, oh, well, it can't be seen by it can't be measured or whatever, right? If you were to keep making things that's impossible to detect, right, people would probably not believe that teapot existed, right? But there's no difference between his assertion of the teapot and your assertion of religion, and the guy going, okay, well, if the teapot doesn't exist, disprove it. How are you going to disprove it? You're going to explore every single cubic inch of space to say that there's no teapot? Then what are you going to say the teapot exists in another dimension that can't be detected or just can't be seen by current instruments? Like, do you see the analogy there between that and a God which can't be tested for, can't be proven? Like, to say that, well, it's not, you can't disprove it is kind of a ridiculous statement. When you assert something, again, to go back to the central point, anything that can be asserted with no evidence can be dismissed with no evidence, right? It's an invalid assertion.
Okay. That's pretty fair. But like in the case of Russell's teapot,
okay,
if somebody were to say that, yes, I would have no way of disproving what they say. But if you were to create a holy book then based off of said teapot and start teaching ways of life about it, what you have is essentially religion, right? Because all religion stems from an untestable, unverifiable, unobservable God that exists outside of all human instrumentation. It's the same thing, no? Or tell me what you think the difference is. No. I definitely agree with you, and I agree that what you're saying is correct. But I feel like merely believing in the existence, I guess we've already had like this idea, or I guess we've already established the idea that merely believing in the existence of it doesn't really hinder you, I guess, in making other rational, logical decisions.
But when you start making decisions with that as the basis of with that as the foundation of your being, it's kind of like making an argument. If the premise is flawed, then everything that stems from that is flawed. Right? Or like solving a math problem where you defined a variable incorrectly, or if you fucked up the first step, nothing is going to come out correctly, right?
I mean, yes. So if you're having discussion about religion or something that stems from religion, then it could be said that there is a possibility that, yeah, somebody who believes in God maybe can't have the most objective viewpoint. But considering that nobody really knows the situation, an objective viewpoint is kind of obscured. We don't know whether there's a God or not, and we can't really find out how to determine whether there is or not. So,
But it's not really like a question. It's not really. I've never wondered that. I don't believe a normal person wonders if there is or isn't a God. The same way that I don't wonder if the Matrix is or isn't real, or the same way I don't wonder if the Star Trek universe is real. Like, I don't even have words for those. Like, what do you call yourself if you don't believe in Klingons? Like, there's no word for that. You just assume that. Oh, well, I mean, it's probably. Why would I believe in any of that? There's no evidence for it. It's just whatever. It's just fiction.
I mean, theoretically, anything is possible until proven otherwise.
Yeah, but you don't believe or base your life around everything until everything is disproven. That would be ridiculous, right? That would be the definition of absurdity.
No, but leaving yourself to the open mind that it is a possibility is something that is, I would say, almost even required to get anywhere, even scientifically, because if you don't open yourself up to the idea of what is possible simply because you can't prove it or disprove it, like
I'm open to the possibility that aliens could come to our planet, and the way that they greet you is by inserting their penis into your rectum at midnight every night. But I don't go outside in my yard and kneel at 11:59 p.m. waiting for them to show up. You see the difference? Like, my mind is open to anything, sure. If God were to be proven, or if there was some proof for it, or if we find out that dark matter is actually just God is really fucking obese and he just takes up that much space in the universe, well, yeah, sure, yeah, I'll be religious. But that's a false equivalency to say that your mind should be open is the same as a religious person going to mass every Sunday and believing in these things that influence their views on everyday life. Like, you can't possibly, like, my mind is open to anything. Anybody's mind should be open to anything. Personally, if there was evidence for God, I would be the first person, not the first person, right? But if I would, yeah, of course, sure. If there's God, yeah, sure. If the Large Hadron Collider fucking revealed, like, the fucking Gospel of Luke was embedded in the Higgs boson or some shit, then yeah, sure, yeah, well, that's fucking sick as shit. Like, holy fuck, you got it. Even if it was in, like, yeah, I would believe it. But just because my mind is open to those possibilities doesn't mean that I automatically believe it without any evidence being put forth about it.
I understand that, and I can get that, and I feel like that's more of a personal point of view, though. Like,
what do you mean?
The idea that I guess I understand what you're saying in discrediting somebody because they have a belief that can't be rationalized, but like, how much can you discredit somebody who can't be rationalized? Or who
I would discredit it immediately, because that person, if they were a rational human being, wouldn't believe it without any evidence. If I told you that, like, you can play a million different thought experiments with this. If I told you that there was an evil monkey that floated behind your back, and every time you turned around he disappeared, and every time you looked in a mirror or camera flashed he phased out of existence for a minute, would you believe that? You wouldn't, because there's no evidence, right? But you can't disprove it, because I just laid out the parameters for which you could never disprove it, which is how God has worked, right? There is no way to disprove God because of the idea of God of the gaps, right? Every time something new has been discovered, right? Every single discovery in the history of all of mankind has turned out to be not magic and not God. There's never been a discovery where, oh my God, like, we can make these Skylake chips. Intel can finally make these 14 nanometer processors because God helped. That's never been the case, right? So God, the God of the gaps, right? The little narrow margins of science that God, is still filling in because we don't have the answer yet, right? Every time we discover an answer, it's never God, right? So this idea that somebody can be taken seriously because they believe in something just because it hasn't been disproven is absurd. Like I said, you can make a million different thought experiments. I can name a million different thought experiments right now where something can't be disproven, but you wouldn't take it seriously and you wouldn't believe in it. You would go, no. And the reason why you would say that, rightfully so, is because of what I said earlier, right? You could repeat back to me, why would I believe there's a floating evil monkey to me? Can you prove it, Stephen? And I would go, well, no, but you can't disprove it. And then you would go, well, you just asserted something with no evidence, so I'm going to dismiss it with no evidence. And then you would move on with your life, and you would be fine. And you would be right to do that, right?
Okay.
Maybe. And if I based any part of my life, right? If I was in a restaurant with you and I never wanted to look at you, or I started to base parts of my life around the existence of that evil monkey, that would irritate you, wouldn't it? If I were to start to center parts of my life around the existence of that evil monkey that floated behind you, it would irritate you after a while, wouldn't it? Because I can't prove it, and anytime you would come to me and say, like, show me some evidence of this monkey, and then I would say, well, dog, can you disprove the evidence can you disprove the existence of that monkey? Then you would start to get increasingly irritated, right? No, I can't disprove it. It's not possible to disprove, because you told me that anytime I try to look at it or anytime I turn around, it's going to disappear. So what am I supposed to do, right? You're in a conundrum.
Okay, yeah. I get what you're saying, and you're definitely right to a larger sense, but I feel as though, and maybe this was just a difference in upbringing, that a point is not solid and made until one side can either disprove or prove it. And maybe that's just different because where I was raised or how I was raised, my mom never, my mom's kind of like your mom, I think. She doesn't really like to have arguments.
Okay, but that's not really, and then
Even-
not to be
sure.
rude, that's not an
Okay.
opinion, that's just wrong. Like I said, and we can do it if you want. Like, I can think of a million more things. I can think of a ton of different things right now. I can make a ton of assertions with no evidence and then give you parameters that would make it impossible to disprove them, but you would not believe them, right?
I suppose I wouldn't believe them, but I would open myself up to the idea that they exist. And I guess that this entire argument came.
But we're not talking about a bunch of people who are open-minded to the idea that God exists. We're talking about a bunch of people that worship God as though he exists and then model their lives after him. That's what we're talking about. If everybody walked around with an open mind and I was running around screaming, oh, these fucking pieces of shit, why would you have an open mind that God exists, you fucking stupid idiot, right? Then we have a problem, right? Then I could understand you attacking me, right? That's not my issue. I don't have a problem with people walking around and being agnostic, right? If people want to walk around and open to the idea, right? Any reason. This is why I hate the term agnosticism and I hate the term atheist, because every atheist is agnostic, okay? Every atheist, if they're a rational person who has shown evidence of God, should become religious. If you're a rational human being, right? Whether you're an atheist or an agnostic, everybody should have their mind open to the possibility of anything, right? Because if evidence is presented, you have to seriously contend with the evidence, right? And then you evaluate your new opinion based on new evidence, right?
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I came into this debate with like the misconception that like your views on God were just, it's not fucking possible, it can never happen, and anybody who believes in it is a complete fucking idiot.
Okay,
So,
well, I believe the last
apologize.
point. I don't believe the last two, but again, and I think I've laid out like a decent enough groundwork to make that assertion that I don't think there's any good reason to believe in a higher power. Just because I said I have an open mind to it doesn't mean that I agree that people should believe in it. In fact, I think there's plenty of reason not to believe in the existence of a higher power, because I think that it's sad that anytime somebody believes in something with no evidence, like, I don't think that shouldn't be acceptable to you as a human being, because every single thing we've done in the history of all of mankind has been a building of what we know to be true, right? That's what everything is. That's what technology is, right? It's a building upon of information that we know to be true, right? That's how everything works. So when you have a bunch of people walking around that are making ethical decisions that have a real influence or a real impact on the real world, and their beliefs are rooted in something that has no foundation in reality, that's a problem. I think that's a problem, right? To use a real life example for today, gay marriage is impossible to argue. It's an impossible argument to have, right? Because most people's beliefs who are against gay marriage, a lot of that is rooted in religion. And when somebody's falling back into a paradigm that exists outside of rationality, you can't engage that person in a conversation. Gay marriage is wrong to them, and there's nothing you can say There's nothing you can say. Gay marriage is wrong to you. Why? Well, in the Bible, blah blah blah. Oh, well, fuck. Why do you believe in the Bible? It's my faith. Well, fuck. I can't do anything. Then it's all over. You know,
Well, no, yeah. People who use religion as a way to form these overarching beliefs that should affect other people, I think that's kind of fucking retarded, personally.
But if you're religious, it makes sense for you to base a lot of your moral and ethical and political beliefs around your religion. Do you disagree with that?
Not entirely, but kind of.
So you think you can be religious in one part of your life and then it has absolutely no impact on any other part of your life?
I think it will have impact, but I think that there is a certain point where rational people can say, this is something that is based off of a belief that may not have rational grounds to it, and as a result, I should at least try my best to separate it from what I'm talking about.
Okay, are you for or against gay marriage?
Personally, I guess I'm for, but honestly, I really just don't care.
Okay, well, pretend that you care, okay? I'm going to be a
Okay.
religious person, okay? And I am super against gay marriage, okay? So argue it with me, okay? And I will argue you into the ground about why
Okay.
gay marriage is wrong, okay? Go. Or I'll start,
wait.
I'll start, okay?
No. I know how this argument goes.
Okay.
I give you an argument, and you go, but it's immoral because it's my belief. Right?
Sure. Well, then what do
Okay.
you say at that point?
There's nothing to say. And I would argue that those people exist, and yes, they are definitely a blight on the view of religion that a lot of people hold, but I would say that not everybody is like that.
Okay, I feel like your view of religion is super irrational. I don't understand how you can expect a whole bunch of people to be religious and not let that religiousness impact their lives. If you genuinely believe something is real, why wouldn't you let it influence your moral or ethical decisions?
I don't have the expectation that people don't, but most rational people can say, while I believe this is real, it does not mean that it has reality, as I cannot prove it. And as a result, there are a number of people who try not to let that affect their lives.
Okay, so then let's take a step back real quick into reality space, okay? Do you believe that if you were to step into a church, do you really believe that the majority of the people there would make the contention, would say, I am religious, but I'm not going to let that impact my political and ethical beliefs? Do you really think the majority of people would say that?
Well, no, but I'm also walking into a church, which is a little different from not a lot of the religious people I know. I know a couple evangelicals, but like there are some religious people I know who hold the same ideas that I do. One of them's even like a progressive, which I thought was like the paradox to end all paradoxes. But I mean, they look at religion and they look at the things that are stated in, say, the Bible, which personally I find to be a little flaky. They look at the things that are said in the Bible and they say, okay, while I believe that some of these are to be true rationally, there's no way I can prove that this is true. And as a result, I will try and separate myself from it the best I can. What I'm saying is like the way you treat, and maybe it's just the attitude you take whenever it's like on stream by yourself, or when it comes to like Nathan or whatever, and you get super defensive about it and you like spurg out over it. Like that's kind of what I came in thinking that you were like actually thinking about when it came to all religious people.
I mean, well, we're not talking about why I think religion is damaging to a human being. Like, that's a different conversation. If you want to go down that route, I mean, we can talk about that. But like, yeah, right now, the biggest problem I have is that. So I understand that you are more of like a free floater theist kind of person, right? You're not. It sounds like you're not like you're non-denominational. You don't really attend a sermon or whatever, right?
I'm based in Christianity, but I'm definitely non-denominant, and I'm trying.
Sure. But you realize that like the majority of people are not like that. That a lot of people in the United States are very religious, and a lot of people in the United States use their religiousness to generate their system, their code of ethics. That's not.
Okay, I would.
We can pull up, like if I were to look at like percentage of Americans that think gay marriage is wrong. I think it's at like 40% these days. If you look at historical trends, it was like 60% in the 90s, I think. Yeah, so these days should not be valid, okay? 40% of people think that gay marriage shouldn't be valid. Where do you think these people are coming from? Back in the 90s, it was like 70% thought that gay marriage shouldn't be allowed.
I would say that definitely there's a decent bit of it that's coming from religion, but I wouldn't say that all of it's coming from religion. And I would also say that as a statistic is not a view that you can take of all religious people per se.
I agree with that, and I don't want to use anecdotal evidence either, because I understand that my community might be different, but like the world that you're describing to me is a mystery. I grew up 12 years in the Catholic Church. I went to Catholic school for 12 years, and I grew up 16, 17 years in the Catholic Church. And this world where all of these people go out to the polls and they vote not based on their religious views but on other things, it doesn't make sense to me. In my personal dealings with religious people and how I see politics play out around in the United States, if you've watched any of the Republican primaries, right? Even Trump himself, yep. What did he say? The first most important book is the Bible, right? Trump said that himself, right? Who was yes, in his rally. And then the second most important book was his book.
I don't not believe you, but could you link me to that, please? Because I don't think I've actually ever seen that before.
I said it the other night.
Because that makes me sad, because I actually kind of
Here's a 30-second clip where Trump says the most important book is the Bible. The second most important book is The Art of the Deal, the one that he wrote, right? I watched this rally. If you look at how Huckabee and Kim Davis are playing out now, how they're talking about they're defending their faith and all of that shit, right? All of this like very much points to religion being tied in very closely with people. When you talk about people that are against the teaching of sexual education in school, all of these things are tying in very, very closely with people's religious beliefs. That's not an opinion. It just seems to be how things are. It's just how the world works. Like if a lot of people are religious and all of these people's religious beliefs are telling them a certain thing, then of course you would expect them to be thinking a certain way, right?
No, yeah, definitely. But like, I don't feel as though everybody does it quite the way you have accentuated.
Possibly not everybody, but I
would
wouldn't
say that there's even a decent, not majority. I wouldn't say there's a majority. I'd say there is a decent sized block of Christians, though, that would say that they believe in God, but attempt to not use words directly from the Bible in order to guide their hand throughout politics and morals.
Well, then at that point, then what's the point of even believing? It just seems so strange.
It's for me personally, because I'm one of the people that I'm one of the people that I'm talking about. For me personally, not only is it a morale thing, not a moral thing. Not only is it something about keeping myself a little more upbeat and a little more happy, because like personally, I don't know about you, but when I sit around and think, holy shit, we're all gonna fucking die one day, I don't want to think like, man, on the other side, that's just it. That's all. And also, I think that God has in the past influenced my life personally, even if it's not things like, oh my God, I got crippled, now I can fucking walk again. You know, it's not like huge things, but I feel like that there in the past has been, even if it's not the Christian God, there has been a higher being affecting how my life has gone.
Okay, so
and that's the reason for my belief, I guess. I believe in it because while I realize that these beliefs are not necessarily rational to have, I believe in them because that's just, it's kind of how my life panned out. I looked at everything. I looked at atheism and agnosticism, and I would say I'm pretty agnostic for a lot of Christians, but I've seen what I believe to be signs from God and acts of God, even if they are small, and as a result, I am willing to devote faith to Him.
Okay, so to speak to your first point, this is one of the reasons why I have a huge problem ideologically with religious people, okay? The idea that you would devalue this existence because it's not enough is really sad to me. So as an atheist who, like, I believe that, okay, fuck me. I never took a philosophy class, okay? So I might be butchering this, okay? It might have been Nishi who said there are jumps in your life that you have, right? And I went through a lot of these when I was younger. There are these stages of your life, okay? In your journey to, I think it's called existentialism, right? First, you have these ideas and beliefs that nothing means anything, right? You have nihilistic, you are fucking nothing, the whole world is whatever. Like you said, right? If you die, if you die, then nothing means anything and your whole life is gone, right? Well, from that, you have to make the jump from that into realizing, okay, well, I only have one life, so I need to make the best of it, right? And when you hit that state of mind, I feel like you just have a much better view of the world in general, right? This life, the life that you have, assuming you're not like an 8-year-old kid that dies in Africa of starvation, right? We're Americans, or I assume you're from the Western world. You sound like it, right?
I'm East Coaster.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. So the fact that you have like the opportunity to do and see so many things, right? You have just everything. I can't even name all the things, right? Losing your virginity, going to baseball games, listening to music, eating good food, right? There's all these things you do, right? You do them and you value them and you appreciate them because that's what it is. It's all you have. It's all life is. It's what life gives you, right? And you have to make the most of every fucking moment because you have one life and then it's gone. The idea that would scare somebody and then they have to retreat into thinking, oh, well, fuck, well, at least if I die here, like, there's the afterlife, ha, ha, ha. Like, damn, I feel like that's just the worst way to view reality. It's like the most, it just seems like a really pathetic way to view the world. How do you respond to that?
Um, I don't know if I would say that it's okay.
A pathetic, yeah, of course you wouldn't say that because I said it because we disagree on this. But so that's why I'm here. So
Okay.
tell me, so what do you don't think? Go ahead.
Okay. Personally, the way I think of it is, I fear that when I die, I will have no afterlife, and that this life will be it. Okay? The
Sure.
reason that I fear that is because while I feel as though this is a great life and something I should want to live fully, I kind of, and I hate to say this because it means coping with a reality that I really hate to cope with, but like I kind of fucked myself when I was young. Okay? Like, my grades are awful. It's going to be really hard to get into a very good college. It's going to be really hard to do a lot of things. And that's because I didn't understand the full weight of like everything I did
Sure.
when I was young. I just it had no bearing on my life at that point in time. And the reason that it's scary to me is because I don't want to have gone into this fucking my life
Okay, so
because I didn't. And
I
like,
completely
can-
understand that. I totally
I can get
understand
where
that.
you would say that that's like pathetic, or where that's like a really sad way to want to view the world, but that's why it's a thing about morale. It's kind of it's not entire. I wouldn't call it entirely pathetic,
Okay.
but it's definitely not something that like you want to believe in God for. But it's one of the ways that I keep going.
So, like, I totally 100 million trillion% agree with everything that you're saying, okay? But, like, I feel like instead of death, I think that death should be a really, really, really scary thing, right? I think it will be, okay? Like, because of my personal views, the way that I viewed a lack of an afterlife in my life, right? That's why even when I had a lot of trouble probably 6 or 7 years ago when I was doing carpet cleaning and Rachel was fucking pregnant and I was poor and I was losing my house and like everything, right? Where I would have killed myself probably, right? If I wouldn't have had the beliefs that I had right now, right? Because it is scary to fuck things up, but there's positive things from that too, right? Something that would be really terrifying to me would be the death of my son. I absolutely don't want my child to die, at least not while I'm still alive. I mean, he'll probably die afterwards, right? Unless I live to be older than him because I'm way fucking badass, right?
Okay.
I don't want my kid to die, okay? That's a horrible fucking thing, okay? But as a result of that, I don't want I do things to make him not die, right? Like he always wears a seatbelt. I don't let him wander into traffic. I don't, like feed him cyanide. Like I do things so that he doesn't die, Much the same way that like I don't want to die personally, right? So I do things to maximize my own survival for the most part, except for engaging people in chat sometimes. I do things I do things to maximize my survival, and I don't ever want to be in a scenario where I die. Like, there's never going to be a point in my entire life. There's never going to be a point in my entire life where I'm on my deathbed and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I feel like I lived a good life. Like, I'm ready to die. Like, that'll never happen. I'll never do the assisted suicide, no matter how much fucking pain I'm in or whatever, because I think that this life is all that I have, right? And I'm not going to go to I'm not going to die because fuck that shit, right? But because I believe that, it leads me to try to maximize the life that I have, right? You said that you've made some bad decisions or whatever. What are you, 20? You're not older than 25, are you? How old are you?
I'm like second year of college.
Oh shit! So you're like 19 or 20?
Like I kind of really fucked my
Okay,
life.
you're 19 or 20 years old, right?
Yeah.
Like, so there's a million different things that you can do right now. Like, you still have the potential, right? It would take you like 7 years of practice to do it. You laugh, you could get shredded as fuck. At 20 years old, your testosterone is still high enough that you can go to the gym and you recover like a fucking monster because you're still young, right?
Yeah.
You can pick up literature, you can read. There's a million different things that you can still do with your life right now. And if you had that fear of death, oh my God, it's like wow, what a perfect analogy. It's like when Bruce has to make the jump. Did you ever watch The Dark Knight Rises?
No.
So The Dark.
I think I know what you're talking.
In The Dark Knight Rises, Bruce is down in the prison and he's super mad and he wants to jump and escape or whatever. And the guy is like, "Do you fear death?" And he's like, "No, I never fear death," or whatever. And then the guy's like, "Then that's why you can't make the jump." And he's like, "What do you mean?" And the guy's like, "Make the jump without the rope, right? Because that fear of death will just drive you to some extent. Like, fear isn't necessarily like a horrible thing, right? And I don't think fear of death, if that's what drives you to be all that you can be, or to do the things that make you happy now, knowing that you're not going to get any happiness once you're dead because it's all nothing at that point, right? I don't think that fear of death is an intrinsically negative thing. In fact, I would say that a lack of fear of death is an intrinsically negative thing because it can lead you to devalue your life now in favor of something that you have no evidence exists, right? Like,
Yeah.
if there were two people and both of them, you're only 19 or 20 years old. You're still like a little kid. I'm still a little kid to some extent, or at least I act like it, right? If you are that young and you have two things, you can have one of two things in the back of your mind. One is, this is the only life that I have, and I have to do the fucking most with it. I have to make the most of this life, okay? You can either have that thought or, oh, fuck, I kind of fucked some shit up. I'm already, almost maybe a quarter of the way through my life. Oh, that sucks. Well, at least there's an afterlife, right? Like, which person do you think is going to be more driven to do more? And when I say do more, I don't necessarily mean be the best NBA player, whatever. Just do more to maximize their personal happiness. Which one do you think is going to be more motivated to do more for themselves?
Definitely the first one. And I get what you're saying, but I feel like you can't focus on or I guess the generalization that people who believe that there is an afterlife are just going to go, well, fuck, I mean, I don't fucking give a shit. Like, who fucking cares? Personally, I'm trying to get as much out of my life now as I possibly fucking can because, like, I already know that I fucked it, and like, I definitely have time to maybe fix things, but like, I've kind of fucked it.
But you're not. Let me tell you. Unless, like, are you missing any like body parts or limbs or anything?
No.
Okay. If you're still a functional, person in terms of like you haven't permanently lost like the use of your eyes or anything, right? And not saying that if you're blind you're subhuman, but like there are so many things that you can do right now, like that you still have the ability to do. Like 19 or 20 years old, you can't make enough. Do you have multiple children?
No.
Okay, fuck. Like you can't. It's not possible. Have you murdered anyone, or do you have any felonies on your record or anything?
Not yet.
Okay, you're in such an okay spot. Like, you're in a totally fine spot. Like, you might have fucked up your college shit and you fucked up your high school grades. You didn't take it good enough to get a scholarship, or maybe you're not going to the college you wanted to, but you're still in a totally okay spot. And there are so many fucking people who are envious of you. Like, that idea that you fucked your life up and you can't redeem yourself, that's some shit that comes when you're like 70 or 80. And you're losing like the function of your body parts and you can no longer do anything. Like, there are still so many things that you can do that you can't possibly have fucked yourself out of. Like, unless your goal was to be the youngest something, I mean, maybe you've lost the ability to do that. But like, there are so many other things that you can pursue right now. And to have a throwaway view of your life because you think that there might be an afterlife waiting for you, which you've already said has no basis in any rational thought, is very sad to me. Do you see why I think that would be sad?
I do see why you think that would be sad, but I would argue that I'm not necessarily throwing away my life, and that a lot of people in my situation wouldn't. But I definitely see that in the case that you are speaking of, yes, that would be pretty sad. But I would also say that some of the people who I know who are in similar positions to my own, who maybe had problems growing up, whether it was, bad parents or like split houses or like, just bad shit. A lot of them who turn to God in order to maybe feel like what happened here wasn't like, you didn't just get like a really unlucky roll of the dice. Like, people can still put their entire life and like try their ass off, but like it's really, really hard to feel like I'm doing anything that like not necessarily doing anything that matters, but like doing anything that will hold bearing once I'm gone.
And
will
I
matter
agree that it is hard, but that's part of like growing and being I don't want to say an adult because there's a lot of immature adults, but that's part of becoming a better person, right? It's part of, and there might be times in your life where your ideology is tested, and you have to wonder, and you have to fall back on that, like, is my life the most important thing to me? Like, or, you know, maybe there's an afterlife and I can say fuck it and I don't really care about this much anymore, right? I think there's something to be said for accepting a shitty reality and then dealing with it rather than pretending that something better exists even though you don't have any evidence for it. I think that the person that accepts that reality can be shitty and then moves through it is always going to be better equipped with life than the person that buries their head in the sand and plays pretend, because that person very quickly becomes incapable of dealing with reality. They can't process information the same way that a more rational human can process information. They have trouble like understanding things in life. You can use the 9/11 hijackers as an example. There are a lot of people, or you can use the recent any shooting or any murders that have ever gone on, right? A lot of people look at this stuff, right? And as a result of intellectual compromise after intellectual compromise, they see somebody go out on like a killing spree or whatever, and they think like, oh my God, this guy is evil. Oh my God, this guy is evil. And it's like, no, I don't think there are any evil people, right? And it's pretty obvious. It's very obvious to anybody who's well-adjusted that there are very, very few evil people. Most of the time, somebody's got a mental disorder, or they're fucked up, or they're in a fucked up situation, or they've been fucked up all their life because of parents or school or society or whatever, right? Things fuck people up and it causes them to do some crazy fucking things, right? That's like one of the things that I noticed that I can pick out from people, right? As soon as they start saying that like a person was evil, like I can tell like that's probably somebody who's not very well adjusted, or they don't have a very realistic outlook on the world, and it shades everything that they see, and it shades their behavior, it shades the way that they vote, it shades the way that they treat and raise their children, the way that they treat and act towards other people, right? Like and this all stems, all of what I'm talking about, this all stems from irrational beliefs, like the irrational belief in an afterlife, right? And the idea that, well, it's okay to have a few irrational beliefs if it helps me, you know, sleep better at the end of the day, right? Because those things will take their toll on you intellectually as you grow older and you try to evaluate and live in the world around you, right? Does that make sense? I can think of more examples if you need.
No, that definitely makes sense. No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Sometimes people talk about how history repeats itself. People sometimes get so blinded by all of the compromises they've made and starting to see the world like black and white and good and evil that they're incapable of evaluating future situations, right? Saddam Hussein was an evil dictator. The 9/11 hijackers were all evil people, right? So because we think that those people were just evil, well, were they really evil? Or maybe there was a better description. Maybe there was a different reason for why they did the things that they did, right? And if everybody understood, okay, well, these people did what they did, not because they were evil, but because of this list of reasons, maybe that would have a greater influence on the American voting public for the next time we decide, hey, we need to send more troops to Iraq, or hey, we need to have a stronger presence in Afghanistan, or hey, we need to start going to war with ISIS, or hey, we need to have troops on the ground in Syria, or hey, right? Because people that are saying these things are oftentimes, and I speak from personal experience here, these people are oftentimes the same people who look at other people and go, oh, those guys are evil. ISIS is evil. These guys are evil. These guys are evil. No, they're not evil. There are reasons for why these people behave the way they do, but you're not capable of seeing those reasons because you've lived your entire life burying your head in the sand to reality to make the world you live in easier to comprehend, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like I'm kind of far on a tangent, but you see how this all kind of ties back into you saying, well, I believe in an afterlife because fuck, it's scary to think of the real world as the way it is, right? And again, I agree the real world is scary, just like an individual's capacity to torture another human being is scary if someone else is telling them to do it, right? The Stanford experiment like proved that, right? That if you have an instructor, people will shock you up to the maximum lethal voltage, right? That it was like 90% of participants did it, right? I think that's scary, right? But you have to know it and you have to understand it to better accept and function in the reality that you live in, right? And to make everybody more functional in the reality you live in, right? In my opinion.
Okay. All right. No, okay. I definitely think that you're right. And I will admit that you probably have won this argument. And
It's not
maybe
even.
just
It's not
because
even
I-
like I'm not even trying to like. It's not like a thing where I want to win it and then walk away and be like, I'm so fucking right. I showed that religious fucking
Oh, yeah,
piece
I
of
know.
shit. It's just more like I think that when you have these thoughts in your head, like if you're willing to say that I believe in X for no reason, but it makes me feel better, that's a scary road to start down, right? Because you see how maybe it can lead to all of the other things that I talked about, you know?
Yeah, okay. Maybe I just come from like a little bit more of a boxed off area than I had initially thought because personally I don't run into a lot of the people you run into who are religious.
Sure.
I run into a lot of them who are very actually anti-religious, to be honest. But okay, no, I hear what you're saying, and I definitely understand what you mean, and I definitely do think you're right.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, what the fuck happened to Beebs? What the fuck?
Doesn't he still play Fizz?
Yeah. Have you not like do you guys just not like talk anymore? Or is it just like
Well, I don't play League anymore, so.
okay. I guess that's fair. Alright, alright.
All right.
That's all, man.
I love
Thank
you, buddy.
I love you too, man.
Bye. Okay. I'm sorry. I got really mad today because I found out that Nathan has been going to Sunday school, and I don't want my kid being raised religious at all. That really fucking bothers me. Did I say Stanford experiment? It was I always mix them up. It's the Milgram experiment, not the Stanford one. The shocking things. Although the Stanford prison experiment, it's the Stanford prison experiment, right? And then the Milgram experiment. The Stanford prison experiment kind of makes the same point, I guess, but well, no, I guess it does. It does make the same point. Destiny, welcome me back to the Larva League for the 6th month in a row. Hey, Nadamic, welcome back to the Larva League for the 6th month in a row. Wow, oh so lucky. Thanks for subbing for 7 months in a row. Is Rachel religious? Yeah, her mom hijacked her and turned her religious when Rachel had fucking cancer, so rip. The Stanford and the Milgram experiment both display similar things, but I meant to say the Milgram one because I was talking about the shocks, not the Stanford one. Didn't you say a few months ago that you thought all of those old psych experiments were BS? No? When did I ever say that? What happens if you don't want Nathan to go to Sunday school, but Rachel wants him to? How does the dynamic play out? I don't know. We talked about it a little bit, but she didn't want to have a conversation about it. Oh, I can't have... One of the biggest problems with me and Rachel is we can't have conversations with each other about anything we disagree on because she always feels like I'm talking down to her. Which I mean, I probably do because I have two big problems. One is that I'm insanely fucking egotistical. And it sounds like I'm being humble by admitting it. And I know that I sound like I'm being humble by admitting it, which is even one of the reasons why I admit it. So it's really even egotistical to admit I'm egotistical. But I really am. And so like anytime I talk to her, she feels like I'm calling her stupid. So when we have like a disagreement like that, then it's just impossible because she feels like I'm attacking her, even if I'm trying not to. But I might be anyway. I don't even know. I can't tell. I'm really bad at... I have a lot of problems sometimes talking to people that I disagree with. So let's just go with that. Didn't I go to a Jesuit school? Yeah, Jesuits are cool people. I think for the most part, Jesuits are cool people. If I get more free time in the future, like I would probably like volunteer to help them out at my old high school or whatever, because those are cool people. Do you think there's any redeeming qualities to religion and some of the things that are taught in the Bible? Not really. I try not to do this. I'm like very, 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 very fiercely atheist. But usually I just make a jab every now and then. I try not to have like serious discussions on this because I think I can get really circle jerky really fast because people that are anti-religious will agree with me very wholeheartedly, and then people that are religious will disagree with me very passionately, and then nothing actually gets done. Like, I don't think I'm converting anybody in here. And if you want to read people shit on religion, like there are a ton of people that do it. You can go read that Christopher Hitchens. Is he the guy that? Is he the guy that does like the? I agree with Russell's last paragraph, Destiny. What we must do. We want to stand upon our own feet and look fair and square at the world. Its good facts, its bad facts, its beauties, and its ugliness. See the world as it is, and be not afraid of it. Conquer the world by intelligence, and not merely by being slavishly subdued by the terror that comes from it. The whole conception of a god is a conception derived from the ancient Oriental despotisms. It is a conception quite unworthy of free men. When you hear people in church debasing themselves and saying that they are miserable sinners and all the rest of it, it seems contemptible and not worthy of self-respecting human beings. We ought to stand up and look the world frankly in the face. We ought to make the best we can of the world, and if it is not so good as we wish, after all, it will still be better than what these others have made of it in all these ages. A good world needs knowledge, kindliness, and courage. It does not need a regretful hankering after the past or a fettering of the free intelligence by the words uttered long ago by ignorant men. It needs a fearless outlook and a free intelligence. It needs hope for the future, not looking back all the time toward a past that is dead, which we trust will be far surpassed by the future that our intelligence can create. Wow, what a master. I guess that was the Russell guy that made the Russell's Teapot thing. I haven't read it before. Unmute robot lady? Oh, yeah, sorry. Destiny, do you really disagree with the idea that you should love your neighbor? I don't really... This is like a math thing, okay? Fucking... This is the problem, okay? I think I've used this analogy on stream before, but we'll use it again, okay? 2 squared equals 4, okay? How do you know that this is actually true, right? How do you know that this is actually true? Well, how do we know that, like, exponents and... I think these are called base numbers? I don't even remember. Wait, what do you call the non-exponent number? The normal number? It's not base numbers. The base and the exponent? I don't remember my fucking grade school shit. Look, okay? How do you get 4 from 2 raised to the power of 2? It is base? Okay. Well, that's easy. You take this number. So if this is it. Oh, well, the way that you do it is you just multiply this by that, right? So that's it. You take 2, and then you multiply it by the exponent, and then you get the product, right? And that's how it works, right? This is how, like, a religious person views the world, right? So... the problem is, even if you get to the right answer, and anybody that's taken a math class should know this, okay? Even if you get to the correct answer, it doesn't mean that your thought process was good, okay? Because if this same person then looks at this issue, okay, well, what is 3 squared, right? Well, it's 6, right? But it's not. So what happened, right? What's the problem, right? This person used a faulty line of reasoning to arrive at the treat your neighbors good. Destiny, the analogy is terrible. Maybe because you're religious, right? Just because you have a thought or an idea doesn't mean that your rationale for getting there was good. Do you understand that? This is a terrible analogy? No, it's a perfect analogy. It perfectly fits, right? You can't, just because any, like I said, like any basic fucking math class you've taken or advanced math class, right? The teacher always grades you on your work, right? You can't, just because you have a good belief, right? So like to go by your example, just because you have a good belief, well, treat your neighbors kindly. That's a good belief, right? Why don't you like that? Okay. Are you treating your neighbors kindly because you realize that you should treat other people with respect so that they treat you with respect so that everybody gets along and lives in harmony? I guess. Well, no, you treat your neighbors kindly because Jesus told you, right? So what's the problem? The problem is, okay, so this is treating your neighbors kindly. Okay, what about transgendered people? Well, for me personally, why do I treat my neighbors kindly? I treat my neighbors kindly because I'm like, I want to be treated kindly and I'm like a respectable human being and I think we all live together and all that shit is good, right? Well, transgendered people, to the religious person, oh, well, this is an affront against God. This is disgusting. God makes you the way that you want, right? They can't get to that same answer. They can't make that leap, right? Because they never had any answer originally that had any basis in rationality, right? It came from a fucking book. It came from a religious teacher, right? They're incapable of making moral or ethical judgments on their own because they always have to look back to their religion to figure out what the answer is, right? Gay marriage, that's wrong. That's wrong. Sex before marriage, sex is a gift from God for the family unit, so that's wrong. Prostitution, again, that's misusing God's gifts, that's wrong. Okay, so that person isn't actually capable of making real decisions, even if a couple of your beliefs are good, right? Even if a couple of your beliefs are good, like don't kill, like the 10 commandments, well, like 7 of the 10 commandments, right? Don't steal, don't kill. Even if a few of your beliefs are good, if your method of arriving at that destination was faulty, then you're not going to consistently make good decisions. Does that make sense? Destiny, you are assuming they are not rational. That's correct. Because if your moral or ethical beliefs come from a book, you are not rational. You are irrational and you are incapable of making moral or ethical judgments. You're incapable of doing it. That's why you need the religion to do it for you. Yes, so yeah, I would say that a religious person who makes ethical or moral judgments based on their religion is irrational. Yeah, I would make that assertion. Yes. Destiny, you focus way too much on just religion, on just Christians and public religions. Well, because those are the ones that I have the big problems with at the moment. Okay. All right, I think we're good. Aren't all the basis for morality completely arbitrary destiny? I feel that someone who derives morality from religion to be not too different from you or myself. I totally disagree, right? I think that for me personally, right, all of your, the sounds fedora as fuck, all right? All of your morality can be very easily derived from this concept. Enlightened self-interest is a philosophy in ethics in which states that persons who act to further the interests of others ultimately serve their own self-interest, right? This might be like a branch off of fucking, who's the Ayn Rand objectivist bullshit? I don't know. I don't remember her philosophy as much, right? But I think that you can very, very easily and very consistently derive all of your ethics and morals from this point of view. Very, very, very easily, right? Do I want somebody to be murdered for no reason by the cops? Well, let's see. Do I want myself to be murdered for no reason from the cops? Not really. So, bam, no more people getting killed by the cops, Do I think that black people are subhumans? Okay, well, should I judge another person by their race? Do I want to be judged by my race? Not really. So, I'm going to go ahead and not be racist. Okay? Right? Very, very simple. If you throw any kind of moral or ethical problem into this box, it should spit out a consistent answer every single time. Very, very easy to do. Very, very easy to do. Like when you think about stuff for like funding of public schools, should funding of public schools be taken, should it be done, by district, or should it just be one giant school district? Well, if I was born in a poor neighborhood, would I want to be fucked on where I go to school? Probably not. So maybe we should do the funding. Like all of these thoughts and ideas can come together, and everything can work just fine. I don't think there's very much that's arbitrary about this, unless you consider like the survival of humanity is arbitrary, and maybe you're like full on anarchist and you don't think that humans are worth anything, and then maybe you run into other problems there. But Destiny, what would you say if there was a religion that made the religious followers objectively better than, say, an atheist? Would you have issues with that? I don't know. All religious followers think they're objectively better than atheists because their religion tends to favor those religious people. Destiny, what % of the Christian people, for example, are actually doing what you're saying? I don't know. It seems... Who are these people? Do you think, like, I feel like we're playing word games. When this chick came out and everybody was cheering her on, do you think the majority of the people in this audience...
Maybe you would like...
Do you think the majority of the people in this audience are atheists or Christian? What do you think?
Maybe you would like to personally express your thanks to the person who had the courage to cause a lot of people to start standing up. A person whose courage exceeds that of 99 9/10% of the politicians of this country, and sadly, that exceeds a bunch of even the pastors of this country. But I believe that her act is going to wake up the politicians, the pastors, and the people. Would you please help me welcome to the stage Kim Davis.
Okay, so we're getting tippy as fucking here. So even though on the surface, right, even though you look at something like this and you think like, oh God, what a bunch of savages, they're stupid people, right? Everything that's happening here is perfectly rational if you let them have their faith, right? Everything here makes sense, right? Why is this woman being celebrated? This woman went to jail because she stood up for her faith, right? Even though, right, Jesus was executed on the cross because he stood up for his faith, right? Was it Peter, after Jesus was executed, was looked down upon, right? Because Jesus said, before the crow crows 3 times or whatever, you'll deny knowing me 3 times, right? And then he felt ashamed afterwards, right? This woman stood up for her faith, and she was punished for it. She almost martyred herself, right? Which is like time and time again, saints have done it in history, right? So this woman is someone who should be revered, right? Even though she was threatened with punishment, she stood steadfast, and she stood up for her faith, and she did what she believed was right. Right? So she feels that everything she did was right. Huckabee here, depending on how much he's just playing politics, right, feels that what she did was right. All of the people in the audience are celebrating her, right, because she stood up for their faith even in the face of persecution, right? And everybody thinks that they're doing the right thing, right? And that's the problem, right? That's a problem, because if you get rid of religion, everything here looks fucking horrible, right? Because if you remove the religious aspect from it, what you have are a bunch of people cheering on a woman who had a public job who was discriminating against gay people. A public job, a public servant who was denying civil rights to a group of people. That's what this is, right? In the real world, that's what this is. But if you're religious, you're incapable of seeing anything beyond, right? Because everything comes from your foundation. And if you build on a bad foundation, the ending answer is always going to be fucked. Right? Every time. And these are the same people that look at people like ISIS. It sounds like an extreme comparison, but there's no difference between what this is like, and this is the hard part, when you stand outside. Oh, dude, I don't give a fuck, whatever. Like I said, I sound fedora tippy as fuck, right? This was an analogy that I read a long, long time ago that I really liked. Like, this is how religious people fight with each other. Like, pretend that this is a cylinder. Pretend that this is a cylinder, right? You have a guy over here who looks at the cylinder from the side and argues that it's a rectangle because this is all they see. And then you have a person who stands in front of it and then they argue, oh, no, it's a circle because that's all they can see. And nobody ever gets the big picture because they're stuck in their own little fucking world, right? But the problem is, this guy, because of his limited point of view, is absolutely right. Like, if you just look at it from the side, sure, it's a rectangle. And they can base their whole life on that faulty reasoning. As long as that's their foundation, they can base their entire life on that train of thought. And this guy, much the same way, looks at it from the front and sees a circle. And again, he can look at it in his entire fucking life. He can base his whole life on that line of thought, and he's kind of right? But both of them, miss the big picture and will never see eye to eye on these issues, right? Because somebody that takes a step back and looks at the topic as a whole goes, well, okay, you're both fucking wrong. Like, just chill the fuck out. Like, you guys are killing each other over the fucking shape of an object and you're both fucking not even looking at the whole picture, right? And when you look at something, and again, this sounds extreme, there's no difference between this woman here and the people that did the 9/11 shit, right? And if it sounds extreme to you, I'm sorry, but the people that hijacked that plane and flew it into the World Trade Centers, they were planes, right? Or all 4 planes, right? The 3 planes that were crashed and then the one that got shot down. No, I'm just kidding. No. But the people that do these crazy extremist religious things, all of them are doing it from a good place to themselves. They all think that they're right. The people that the people that hijacked the planes, flew into the buildings, they thought that what they were doing was correct. They thought that they were ultimately serving a purpose. Whether that purpose was religious or political, they believed in their hearts that what they were doing was right. But when you take a step back and you look at it, dog, this is fucked up, all right? You're literally crashing planes into buildings and killing people. It's fucked up. It's fucked up. And it only makes sense if you have your crazy extremist fucking point of view, right? Much the same way that this woman who comes out and is celebrated for denying civil rights to a group of people is being celebrated by a group of people who are fucking religious, right? This kind of shit is a problem. This is a problem. Do you understand? Like, this is why I have problems. And all of this goes back to, I have a belief, and it's irrational, and I know that, but I have a belief. And I'm going to start to base parts of my life around that irrationality. How do you argue with someone like that? What do you say to somebody like that who's already made the point that they can have an irrational belief? How can you possibly tell them that anything they think is wrong? Right? You can't do it. Like,